right, good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. This is a very important day in the city of Pittsburgh, and I want to thank, we have a number of invited guests that are going to speak on this issue. But first, we just want to talk about what's going on and where City Council is going to play a role in the next couple of months. So Pittsburgh, over the last couple of months, has seen firsthand an act of terror and violence in our community, but we have also seen this across our country. And I'm standing with a number of people here today who agree with me and all of our city in saying enough is enough and this has to stop. Today, Pittsburgh is going to be a leader in building a statewide coalition to fight gun violence and the gun lobby. We are introducing, my council colleagues and I, with the support of the mayor, introducing 3 common sense gun laws that we hope to pass by February 14th. The reason we are going to pass those laws by February 14th is, unfortunately, that is the 1-year anniversary of the Parkland shooting. It's too often that we have these anniversaries and they need to be dealt with, and we are going to do that from a local level, fighting the state and taking it federally and nationally with the help of our mayor. So the 3 bills we are going to introduce: 1 is an assault weapon ban in the city of Pittsburgh. 2 is an accessory ammunition and modification ban. The 3rd one is an extreme risk protection ban to protect our residents. Those are the 3 bills that we are going to introduce this Tuesday. We're going to allow some public comment periods, and then we are going to take a final vote around February 14th. But I would now like to thank somebody who helped me write these pieces of legislation, who was with us each and every moment of that horrific incident that we had to deal with a month or so ago, and that is Councilwoman Erika Strassburger.
Thank you. Reverend Burgess, would you like to come up and stand with us? Thank you. And thank you, Councilman O'Connor, for all of the work that you've put into this as well. Today, I stand here in solidarity with my fellow elected officials, community advocates, those forever impacted by the Squirrel Hill Massacre, and the victims of gun violence that have plagued many of our Pittsburgh communities and neighborhoods for far too long. As an elected leader, my most important duty is to keep my constituents and communities safe. But when it comes to doing things like keeping military-grade weapons off the streets or firearms out of the hands of folks who pose a danger to others or themselves, we've been blocked at every turn. So we're here to say, no more. The Pennsylvania Constitution guarantees us the rights to peace, safety, and happiness. And the inability for local governments to enact their own common sense gun control measures defies this principle to its core. So we're going to fight on behalf of our residents for our rights guaranteed to us by our Commonwealth. I was a junior in high school when the mass shooting at Columbine happened. And frankly, I find it shameful that we haven't found a way by now toward meaningful permanent action at the federal level. And as a result, mass shootings are on the rise. But as was mentioned, let me be clear, we're not here today only to address mass gun violence. We know that for decades and decades, gun violence on the streets of Pittsburgh and other areas across the country has taken far too many of our sons and daughters and our mothers and fathers. The Stop the Violence initiative announced earlier this week by my council colleagues, Reverend Burgess and Councilman Lavelle, our companion initiative to ours today. We have to tackle and take down gun violence from all sides, and that's what we're working to do. We know our legislation will only go so far, and that's why, as Councilman O'Connor mentioned, we're calling on cities across Pennsylvania and the entire nation to join Pittsburgh in our efforts. That's why we're calling on our state electeds to take meaningful action on firearms, and why we're so grateful to have the partnership of Governor Wolf, Auditor General DePasquale, Senator Fontana, Representative Frankel, among so many others. I want to thank Councilman O'Connor again and the mayor and their staff for their partnership and hard work leading to today. Really, the hard work's just beginning, but it's long past time for meaningful action on this issue, and we're not going to stop until the job is done.
I do want to say that Council President Kraus is also, all council members are going to sponsor this bill, but Council President Kraus couldn't be here, but he obviously gives us his support. It's now my pleasure to bring up somebody who has fought this for many years on City Council, but is the reason that the coalition that we're going to build branches outside of the city of Pittsburgh. And it's a good sign that other cities across this country are going to fight this with us, and that is our Mayor, Bill Peduto.
Thank you, Councilman. I first off want to thank all of City Council for backing this initiative. It's rare that we have the ability as 9 diverse independent elected officials to agree, but I think that it has been very clear over the past several years that there needs to be more that can be done at a local level, and that requires the changes of laws at a state and federal level to empower us to protect the people that we call our neighbors. What does this bill do? An assault weapons ban, which Senator Fontana has been championing, making it unlawful to manufacture, sell, purchase, transport, carry, store, or otherwise hold in one's possession an assault weapon within the city of Pittsburgh, such as the Colt AR-15 automatic rifle used in the Tree of Life shooting and used throughout the neighborhoods of Pittsburgh on a monthly basis, taking away from us the promise of youth, the promise of our future, and on a daily basis ripping our neighborhoods apart. An accessories, ammunition, and modification ban bearing such items as bump stocks temporarily prohibit a person from having guns, barring items such as bump stocks, armor-penetrating bullets, sawed-off rifles, and large-capacity magazines often used in mass shootings. And finally, the adoption of extreme risk protection orders, which enable courts to temporarily prohibit a person from having guns if law enforcement or immediate family members show that the individual poses a significant danger. These are common sense rules. These provide additional protection to the people not only of Pittsburgh, but around the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and around the United States, with the ability to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Second Amendment rights. The measure doesn't infringe on anyone's Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms. But like most rights, as in all rights, the Second Amendment rights are not unlimited. It's not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever in any manner whatsoever for whatever purpose, especially when the facts are that they are killing thousands upon thousands of our neighbors. It's like shouting fire in a crowded theater. The First Amendment protects speech, but not dangerous speech. We have a moral imperative to protect our citizens, and as Councilperson Strassburger has mentioned, their constitutional rights to peace, safety, and happiness. To have these laws judged on a level playing field and to let Pittsburgh do what's right for Pittsburgh, we're supporting measures like Representative Frankel's to bar state preemption of our own local ordinances. Cities and towns nationwide are sharing the same awful gun-related massacres, and we believe that they too deserve such protection. That's why we've reached out to leaders in more than 100 cities nationwide. Mayors and elected leaders from around the country are already championing local action, understanding that what has stalled in Washington doesn't necessarily mean that we can't make it happen at a local level. Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C. is banning bump stocks. Mayor Frey of Minneapolis, Minnesota, mandatory background checks. Mayor Ginther of Columbus, Ohio, comprehensive neighborhood safety strategy to reduce gun violence. Mayor London Breed of San Francisco has already passed a number of the measures Pittsburgh is proposing today. We will be working with them and many others to ensure we are doing everything we can to ensure our neighbors' rights to peace, safety, and happiness. Let me make this abundantly clear. We intend to work not only in this council chamber, but across the state of Pennsylvania, in council chambers in every town and village across this state, to get the support that is needed to change the laws in Harrisburg. But we won't stop there. We'll work in city halls across the United States, one by one, going to the places where they have not only been the victims of mass homicide, but have been the victims of homicide on a continual basis, of losing young people, of losing grandmas, of losing people, because the only answer we've gotten from Washington is nothing can be done. There's nothing that can be done. That is not an answer. There are solutions that can be done. And this battle may start today in Pittsburgh City Council and in City Hall right behind us, but it will be echoed throughout the city halls across Pennsylvania and across the United States. And with that, it's my honor to recognize our leader of the state of Pennsylvania, Governor Tom Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor Peduto, and thank you, Corey. Thank you, Erika. Thank you for leading on this issue, and thank you for having me here today. I'm here because I want to show solidarity with the city of Pittsburgh and with City Council. I want to show solidarity with those not just here, but all across the Commonwealth who are all calling for safer communities. Earlier this year, I signed the first major gun safety bill in decades in Pennsylvania. It was long overdue, and we still have a lot of work to do, as the mayor and the council people have said. We have a lot of work to do here in Pittsburgh, a lot of work to do in Harrisburg, a lot of work to do in Washington. So I'm here today to say, along with all these folks, we're not giving up. I'm going to continue to champion common sense gun safety at the state level, and I am going to continue to urge Washington to live up to its responsibilities. The reality is that there is, in fact, bipartisan support in the public and in the legislature for many of these changes. There's bipartisan support for universal background checks. There's bipartisan support for closing the gun show loophole right here in Pennsylvania. There's bipartisan support for banning bump stocks. There's bipartisan support for a statewide emergency risk order. We need to make more progress at the state, at the federal, at the municipal levels. We understand, all of us, that people are frustrated, and I understand the urgency to act. And I know everyone here is ready to work toward these changes. We saw how people came together to support the victims and families of the Tree of Life Synagogue. But we know, again, our work is not yet done. If we continue to allow so many citizens to live in fear of mass shootings, when we can act right now to reduce that risk, we're robbing citizens of their rights to life, to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We need these protections in the state, the federal level, because it is not just synagogues in Pittsburgh that are at risk. It's churches in Lancaster. It's mosques in Allentown. It's schools in Erie, movie theaters in Johnstown, concert halls in Philadelphia, colleges in Scranton, streets in Harrisburg, and the list goes on and on and on. As I said here in October, we simply cannot accept this kind of violence as a normal part of American life. And now we can't wait any longer. I'm proud to stand here today with all of you, and I'm proud to be here in Pittsburgh, because stronger than hate, united against violence, that's who we are, that's who Pennsylvania is, that's who we have to be. Thank you very much. Corey.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor. As you can see, we do have support at the state level, and we're going to get to our local state officials in just one second. But now it's my privilege to bring up Rob Conroy from Ceasefire PA, who's going to speak about what their organization's going to do and the support that we have from Moms Demand Action as well. And he's going to introduce a very special guest who's going to be giving some comments as well. Rob.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. As someone who works every day to make our communities safer, on this, the 6th anniversary of the Sandy Hook massacre, I applaud what our mayor and city council are doing here today to help the citizens of this city live lives free from the threat of gun violence. When I heard 6 years ago that 20 children just beginning elementary school were gunned down in their classrooms, I, who had already been shaken to my core by Aurora that summer, thought two things. One, that there could never be a gun-related tragedy that gutted me as much. And two, that surely now would be the time when our state and/or federal legislators would be forced to act, would feel it in their hearts on both sides of the aisle to pass legislation that would make it more difficult for those who should not have firearms to have firearms ready and able to kill people and to kill children. Well, I was wrong on both counts. Among hundreds of other tragedies, Pulse happened, and Las Vegas happened. And unless you count Pennsylvania designating a state gun just a few months after Sandy Hook, neither our federal or our state legislators did anything for the first 4 years. It took another school massacre 5 years later, this time in Parkland, Florida, and the amazing groundswell of activism of students from that school and kids from all over the world for our state legislature to finally pass a law that prohibits domestic abusers from possessing firearms while an active protection from abuse order against them is in place. The feds, by the way, have still done nothing. And that was it. And then October 27th happened. Just a couple of weeks after the legislature broke for the year, 11 sweet, devoted souls were mowed down and 5 others wounded, some quite profoundly, in our backyard in the Tree of Life Synagogue at Squirrel Hill. Killed for having the temerity to be observant Jews attending Shabbat services. To say that I and the rest of this city, including I know for a fact, a couple of these elected officials standing here next to me, because I was talking to them that day, were beyond shattered is an understatement. And while nothing that can be done to replace those lives that were lost, or heal the physical wounds of those like Dan Lager, who were shot but survived, or heal the psychic and emotional trauma of their friends, family, and neighbors, if one good thing came out of this nightmare, it's the way our city dusted itself off, and every one of our neighborhoods huddled a little closer together, locking arms and showing the world that we are stronger than hate. I'm proud of my city, and I'm proud of the men and women who lead it, like Mayor Peduto, Councilman O'Connor, Councilwoman Strassburger, Council President Kraus, Governor Wolf, state senators and state reps that are here, who are standing up to the violence at Tree of Life and the violence that happens day after day in so many of our neighborhoods by introducing and building both a statewide and national consensus around these 3 key pieces of legislation. We need to get assault weapons off the streets. We need to reduce the amount of bullets in the magazine clips that can be used in so many different types of weapons. And we need extreme risk protection orders to be an option for family members to temporarily disarm at-risk individuals. We need to fight to get these laws passed and to continue to fight to push these initiatives state and nationwide. And we at Ceasefire PA and Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America are here to support you, all of you, all of you, all of you, every step of the way. Legislation isn't the only step in the process for a peaceful world, but it's an important first step that can save lives while we address and conquer the root causes of gun violence together. So thanks again for doing what you're doing to make the citizens of Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania safer. At this time, I would like to introduce someone that I am proud to call a friend and a partner in the fight against gun violence. She's been leading the charge as president of Prevent Another Crime, founder of Prevent Another Crime Today, co-chair of the Black Political Empowerment Project, co-convener of the Greater Pittsburgh Coalition Against Violence, and a woman who fights every day with the Center of Victims to help victims who have to go through the court process after gun crimes and other crimes have happened. So without further ado, Ms. Valerie Dixon.
Thank you, Rob, so much, and thanks everybody for being here. And first of all and foremost, I want to thank our leadership in the state of Pennsylvania, because this proves to you that the vote does work. And leadership in Pennsylvania doesn't mean that we are locked in to what nationally, everybody does. We can make our own decisions with the leaders that we have put in place. And I'm proud, very proud, of the leadership shown here today and taking a huge step, being a pilot for what the country can see and do. I'm not just there's a lot of titles behind my name, but the reason that I am here, and many others as well, is because our child was murdered on the streets of the city of Pittsburgh. And so for a young man who my son Rob Dixon was, 2 weeks away from going to practice with the Atlanta Falcons, somebody asked somebody, "Man, I need a gun." He said, "What's it to you?" He showed him some drugs. He said, "I'll be back." He came back in 2 hours with a mint condition .357. And 6 hours later, my son had 4 bullets in him and he lay dead in the street. When we talk about gun violence, we see this on a regular basis. What makes the headlines definitely is the tragedy of Tree of Life Synagogue. Definitely the tragedy that has happened across this country. But we see it in a community every day. We see these tragedies every single day. When we leave here today, there might be another one and another one. And what I want to share is that there's a lot, if anybody still wears a watch, you know there's a lot of working parts in a watch. A lot of working parts to get you what the time of day is across the world in America. This is what this is a lot of working parts together, and we got to identify that we all have to work together on every single level. Some people can sign off on some legislation. Some people are foot soldiers out there face to face with those that are impacted by crime and violence, those who want to stop it, those who are involved with it. We are face to face with this every day. And any one of us who lives our life, it can be changed in an instant. In an instant. And so when this has happened to my family 17 years ago, I was just crying this morning. That pain does not leave. But what do we do with that? We channel it into something that's going to create change. And the legislation that they're talking about today, if you don't support this, I don't know what else that you would support in regard to. Some people have the mindset of gun control. Some people have a problem with the word control. How about responsible gun ownership? How about we say it like that? Because nobody wants to bury their child, their mother, their aunt, their uncle, any family member. And as we come upon the holidays right now, there's a lot of people dealing with trauma, struggling trying to get through that loss. And when it first instantly happened, it's a million people around you. But as the days and months and weeks trickle by, you're all alone in your grief. Let's not forget those people that have lost a loved one to violence. Let's reach out to them. Continue to make a call, let them know that their loved one meant something in this world. And our legislation, our leadership in the state of Pennsylvania is showing that today. They're proving that they're not going to sit down and twiddle their fingers and say, can't nothing be done. They said, we can do it. We're in the seat to do it. And that's how important, I'm going to stress again, how important the vote is. We got the right people in place. We got to keep that energy and generate it for the general election in 2020. Let's not forget, when someone's in seat, their seat is up for another vote, and everything that has been done and accomplished can be erased away. Remember what's being done today so we can keep that, build on that, and make a difference in this city and across the country. And I thank you all for coming out today.
Thank you. The governor wants to give you a hug.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Governor. Thank you for being here.
I think, Valerie, this is what we're getting into now, is we're getting into the experiences that people have. And she's been a great advocate for this cause for a number of years now. So now I'm going to pass it off to 2 students who is the next generation that's going to help us fight this. And this is where the ground fight begins, with not only younger people, but neighborhood advocates. And I'm gonna pass it off to 2 students from Alderdice, which, if you don't know, is a couple blocks from the Tree of Life. And they have been very helpful in writing legislation and gaining support throughout not only the Squirrel Hill neighborhood, but across the county as well. So I'm gonna bring up Josh Fidel and Cody Murphy to give some comments from a student's perspective.
Thank you, Councilman. My name is Josh Fidel. I am a senior at Taylor Alderdice. Ani Yehudi. I am a Jew. I am proud to be Jewish, However, ever since the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in the history of this country took place only a couple blocks away from my home, I feel different about being Jewish. Now, I have the constant fear of being attacked in the back of my mind, a feeling that no person should ever feel. It is our civic duty to ensure that no other person ever has to feel this way, and that these horrific acts can never happen again in any community. In Judaism, there is a common belief that it is the bystander's duty to come to the aid of their fellow man in times of need. In the book of Vayikra of the Torah, or Leviticus as it's called in English, it states, "If one person is able to save another and does not save him, he transgresses the commandment, neither shalt thou stand idly by the blood of thy neighbor." No one could have predicted that this tragedy would have happened when and how it did. But we cannot just stand idly by and continue to be bystanders as more and more Americans die to guns held by the hands of hate. We can no longer save those 11 people or spare their families the pain of their brutal deaths. However, we can save other people and their loved ones from suffering the same fate. Our country has a problem. No other country in the world experiences anywhere near as much gun violence as we do. Our streets, our schools, our neighborhoods, our synagogues, our churches, our mosques, our movie theaters, our concerts, our sporting events are no longer safe. Our homes are no longer safe. Make no mistake, this was an attack on the Jewish faith. Yet, no community is spared from the hatred and violence that was displayed on October 27th. This was an attack on who we are as a city. It is time for us to step up and make a change. It is time for us to stop these massacres from happening in our communities. We need common sense gun laws now. So please, help us make a difference in the world. We are stronger together, stronger than hate. Thank you.
As a teenager living in 2018, I am terrified of being the victim of a school shooting. We have monthly drills at our school. We learn how to barricade the door, turn off all the lights, and hide in a corner. I have learned to be afraid of crowds. I have learned to be afraid of fire drills. Big crowds are easy targets. There have never been as many school shootings before. There have never been as many mass shootings. It feels like every day there's another Google alert on my phone. 10 people dead, 7, 12, 13. You learn to be apathetic when you see the headlines, because if you aren't apathetic, you're terrified. So when a mass shooting happens at the synagogue across the street from your house, it takes a little bit to sink in. Although gun violence is one of the biggest issues our country faces, it had never affected me directly before. I had never been woken up by sirens and gunshots. The issue of gun control has always been important to my generation, the generation of active shooter Joes. We know how to barricade a door, we know how to flee as quickly as possible. But dealing with trauma and grief and the fact that you don't feel safe anymore is something that I'm still not sure how to do, and no teenager should have to know how to do. No one else should ever have to go through something like this again. This ends now. It needs to.
Thank you, guys. Thank you both. Obviously, you know, the next generation is willing to fight with us. I do want to do some recognitions before I bring up our two state leaders. Linda Wren is here from Pittsburgh School Board, and also State Senator Jay Costa is here as well. So it's my privilege to bring up two people that have fought for this for a number of years at the state. State Senator Wayne Fontana and State Representative who represents Squirrel Hill, Dan Frankel.
Thank you, Corey, and thanks, Mayor, and City Council for doing what you're doing, Governor for being here, Jay, and Dan for being here to show the support. with the tragic shootings at the Tree of Life fresh in our mind, and certainly doing this on the anniversary of Sandy Hook, these are seared in our mind, in our memory, these events. And as has been said here, it's imperative that we all step up and work together. I'm not naive. I know this fight is not going to be easy, even moving forward. I'm sure of that, unfortunately. With the well-funded gun lobby and the stone-deaf friends in both Washington and Harrisburg, they should understand, though, that we're not going to go away this time. We're going to work together and push. We're on the right side of this issue. We know that, and that's why it gives us hope and gives us strength. Last session, I introduced two reasonable gun reform measures, and I'll be reintroducing them this year in the new legislative session. Last session was Senate Bill 17 and Senate Bill 18. Two bills that mirror what the City Council's doing. So they've been up there. Now, unfortunately, they were never brought up for discussion. They get assigned to committee, but they've never been brought up for discussion or debate, let alone a floor vote. And you know why, right? The majority party won't bring them up. One of my bills would allow for the extreme risk protection order, what the city's also doing, which is empower family members to petition a court to temporarily take guns away from a loved one who is in the throes of psychiatric crisis. I was telling the governor earlier, I'm getting emails calling it red flag legislation. It doesn't have due process, so we shouldn't be for it. I mean, that's a joke. It has due process, and it is legitimate, and it is reasonable. My other legislation would be in certain assault rifles that have too many times, obviously, become the weapons of choice for mass shooters, which happened on October 27th and many other places around our country. The bill would also limit the magazine capacity for semi-automatic weapons, again, mirror what the city's doing. I should emphasize that I'm talking about the same types of weapons, by the way, that our own state police tried to ban decades ago. That's how long it's been. Sadly, the gun lobby and their political apologies have always managed to defeat the attempts to regulate this deadly weaponry. But they should know we're not giving up. We're not giving up. You can see what's here today. But it's about time some of our other public officials, both in Harrisburg and Washington, step up to get this done. We know it's an uphill battle, which is getting more and more difficult to comprehend. I can't figure it out. We must continue our advocacy. We must continue our fight. What I see from Pittsburgh here, I'm proud to be a senator from Pittsburgh, to see all this activism in our community, all these folks behind us. It's good to see. Unfortunately, many of them were affected by gun violence, unfortunately. But it's time we all come together. It's time we all fight harder. It's time we all step up and do what's right and pass reasonable, logical, rational gun reform in our state, in our country, and certainly in our city. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Representative Dan Frankel, and I represent the community of Squirrel Hill, and I've done that for 20 years. I want to thank my colleagues here from local government, from the city, our city council people, our mayor, who have introduced these pieces of legislation, and certainly my colleagues in the legislature, and especially Governor Wolf, who's been a champion for common sense gun laws since he was running for office the first time, and certainly in his first term, and I know in his second term is going to make it a priority here. I've been involved in this for 20 years. I was elected 20 years ago, and 3 months after I was elected, the Columbine massacre took place. And at that time, I and a number of other colleagues put together a common sense gun safety caucus. Up until this October, we didn't get anything accomplished at the state level. The forces, the so-called gun rights groups, were too powerful. They made it very difficult for us to get any even consideration or bills to the House floor. But that changed this October, in large part to the people you see behind me here, the people from Moms Demand Action, the people from Ceasefire, we finally got, as was said earlier, a piece of truly meaningful legislation done. House Bill 2060, which basically reforms the laws with respect to how we remove weapons from people who are subject to a protection from abuse order. It's a huge thing. It will save lives. And it gives me hope that we will have the opportunity to be successful again, both with these leaders that you see here today and these advocates who have been so forceful. Following the massacre at the synagogue in the heart of my district, people approached me on the street, in the grocery store, at services, all asking for elected officials to do something to create a feeling of safety in our community. As one young lady said, people talk about hopes and prayers, but when people are taking weapons into houses of worship, where is it safe for us to pray? People are calling for action. If the elected officials in the Commonwealth refuse to take action, local officials have the right to do so. In fact, they have the obligation to do so. After all, it's their job to create a safe environment in our cities free of terrorism and hate. They have a right to respond to the needs and demands of their own constituents, our neighbors, to craft regulations around carrying weapons that meets our needs. It's not federal law or the Second Amendment that is blocking local governments from enacting creative and substantive policies to keep our residents safe. It's our state laws that are the problem. Barring preemption, Pennsylvania municipalities can create stronger enforcement measures. For much of the history of the United States, cities had the power to enact local gun laws. Prior to 1980, few states preempted decision-making around firearms. A nationwide preemption campaign supported by the NRA resulted in new preemption laws. Pennsylvania is one of 42 states with preemption laws. In states without preemption laws, cities have passed strong laws regulating firearms. In New York, residents must get a permit to own a gun. And in practice, a few residents actually do in New York. Towns in Connecticut limit weapons in town-owned buildings and property. Pittsburgh has the right to regulate the weapons that endanger our residents. State legislators should step aside. If they're not willing to step up and pass the laws at the state level, we have the obligation to enable our local government elected officials to do so. Thank you.
That sums up all of our speakers. Obviously, you can see we have a lot of support statewide.